Hello and welcome to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
We got all three of us today.
The three amigas.
We, again, always have wonderful guests on. But before we go into the introduction of who our guest is, Joe's going to remind us of our show's purpose.
Yeah, the show's purpose is to expose Rotarian and non-Rotarians to service opportunities. And how we do that is have amazing guests on, like Leslie. We're excited to have you on. And they tell great stories, share their experiences, what groups that they're affiliated with, and then how they got introduced to service. It's always really inspiring for those that are either serving and need a little shot in the arm to get going, or somebody that's looking for service.
Shot in the arm. It's always different too. I'm like, oh, that was a good one, Joe. This was a good one. Nice job. So Joe gave us just a little snippet of who our guest is today, but I will formally introduce her. We have Leslie Pitt on. She is the founder of Project Lolo. We're so excited to have you on. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it sounds like you're meeting us from San Diego.
I am from the Marina, San Diego. I'm at a conference, so I wish I could say I was here on vacation, but I'm not. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for carving out time to hop on as a guest for Searching for Service. Really, in this first segment of our show, we always like to get to know our guests. So we know that you like to travel, even though this is for professional reasons. But let's first start off with, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Twin Cities. My family and I moved around the Midwest, but really landed in the Twin Cities when I was in junior high. So one of the northeast suburbs, went to Irondale High School, and went to St. Olaf for my undergrad. So
the MIAC division. I know the MIAC division very
absolutely. Yep.
Maybe we had chatted about that before, Leslie.
I think we may have.
Leslie and I go way back. That's a story for another day. But and so we have you on as our guest to talk about the foundation that you have, which is Project Lolo. And so can you share with our guests, what is Project Lolo?
Project Lolo is a global nonprofit, and our primary mission is to provide access to orthopedic care and devices to kids in developing countries. Our secondary function is to provide access to educational materials such as books or different curricula that focuses on inclusive and diverse education. How we work is we partner with clinics that are in country who serve the children that we ultimately serve. So our first and longest clinical partner is in Ghana, West Africa, and they have been there since 1975, and we were just fortunate to connect with them and really liked the work that we do. We are developing more clinical partnerships, I'm excited to say, in Uganda and secondarily in Kenya.
Beautiful.
Uganda is a real popular place for Rotary. I can tell you that. We were just talking about that. We've had several guests on that have done service work there in a myriad of different ways, and some of the larger. So it's kind of fun to see that connective tissue between all of those things.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, Leslie, are you a Rotarian?
I am. I am part of the Minneapolis University Rotary Club.
Go ahead.
I joined about a year ago, and how and why I joined Rotary is my dad was Rotarian back in the 70s. And so through the service projects that he and his friends did then, it just really opened my eyes to the greater world and the greater good that we can do in the world. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, when my dad was Rotarian back in the 70s, I don't think women could be Rotary members. So,
yep.
Right? And even my parents were in JCs, and so my dad was in JCs and my mom was in Mrs. JCs. So when I was really looking for a network, a club to join, going back to knowing the global scope of the Rotary, the history of Rotary, and what it's done with with polio, and just really the rich history of doing good in the world is really why I was drawn to Rotary, and ultimately I'm glad to be part of it.
Well, we're happy to have a fellow Rotarian on. So,
Thank you.
and what we're finding too about a lot of Rotarians is that they have passions in many different areas, whether it be just community in itself or a different path, such as the foundation that you have started yourself. So.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the common theme, right? And it just seems like you come together as like-minded people who just want to do service projects or service above self. And I think it's just a really great community globally of like-minded thinkers and doers.
Do you remember your first service project with Rotary?
The first one, and it's only been a year, was just helping out with Feed My Starving Children. And right. Another great organization.
So
go ahead.
Leslie, I was just going to ask, so when your father was a part of Rotary, did you ever do any service projects alongside him?
Absolutely. So we lived in New Ulm, Minnesota at the time.
Yeah.
And small town, and really was sort of the idyllic growing up situation at that, in the 70s. And my parents owned a couple of restaurants, and all of their friends were business owners. And so one of the first things that I remember helping out was what was called Heritage Fest. And it's no longer, but it was in the summer, and it was this huge party, if you will. So they had German polka bands, and, New Ulm has a very, history rich in German heritage. And so helping with the food tent where they served brats and sauerkraut. And of course, my brother and I both always wanted to help our parents in the restaurant, or in this case, the food stand. That was, I think, probably our first official Rotary service project. Not sure how much we really did, other than probably got into our parents' ways, but, we thought we were helping.
Eat a few brats, have a couple beers.
Absolutely. Shell's Beer Breweries down there. So, definitely represented. I'm kidding.
So I don't know if I asked you this when we first met, but is your heritage, is your background German? Like, are you German?
My dad's side, and then my mom's side of family is Scandinavian.
Okay.
I was going to say, there's got to be Norwegian in there somewhere.
Yeah. I know. That's the reason I asked. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. Any questions, guys?
What was your journey to starting the nonprofit?
Great question. So Project Lolo was probably years in the making without me really knowing it. So when I was in college, I wanted to do the Peace Corps and really had a desire to go to Africa. And I don't know why, other than it just really seemed like a different world. And I didn't go into the Peace Corps ultimately because I have a prosthetic leg. So when I graduated from college in 1990, this is pre-cell phone era. This is pre-internet era. And frankly, I was a little nervous about being placed somewhere for a couple of years through the Peace Corps and not really knowing, like, what would I do if my prosthetic leg broke down, and, the reality of it. So fast forward, I just got involved with other sort of work through helping people with limb loss. So I was on the board of directors for the Amputee Coalition for a number of years and did a lot of work with the Transportation Safety Administration and getting insurance parity laws passed, and really felt like I had done some good work. And I think I just sort of kept thinking there's more. There's a bigger world. I was proud of the work that I was able to be part of here in the U.S. and just really kept thinking there's this bigger world that needs help. So ultimately, I took a bit of a hiatus from the O&P, the orthotic and prosthetic world, and spent a summer studying in Geneva, Switzerland, and got a graduate certificate in global health and human rights from the University of Geneva's medical school. And it was there that I just met my people and really understood the world. And I shouldn't say that. Understood that there are so many other opportunities to help. And I came across a report from the UN that was talking about people with disabilities and really what's happening to them globally. And there was a specific paragraph that I read about children, and children in many parts of the world, because of their disabilities, are denied basic human rights. So right to life in some cases, right to education, right to healthcare, right to dignity, the list goes on. As somebody who lost my leg when I was 6, I was just stumped by that, really thinking I had never, that was not my experience. And I thought I had to do something about it. I knew, or I really thought, if that would have been me in 1975, any other part of the world, I was run over by a gravel truck, I wouldn't have survived. As a little girl, if I was living in Ghana or Guatemala, I would never have had the educational opportunities. I would never have been able to become a nurse and then ultimately a lawyer. And just everything that I've achieved educationally and professionally, I would have been denied to me because of my disability. And so I really, after spending the summer in Geneva, thought, I want to partner with Save the Children or UNICEF, or there certainly had to be organizations who were helping children with disabilities, specifically limb loss. And finding that there were none, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. And so I'm one of those people who just thinks, build it and they will come. So ultimately, after a trip to Ghana, my brother and I went to sort of do a due diligence and really understand this particular clinic and really to understand the breadth and the gravity of what's happening to children with disabilities, specifically in Ghana. I mean, we just saw a handful of children, but we came back and we said, yeah, this is big. This is bigger than we realized. And we knew that we can't, the thing with doing this sort of work is you can't help everybody as much as we want. And so you do help one child at a time. So ultimately,
Leslie, can I hit pause for just a second because we're just about to wrap up with the segment, but let's save this for the rest of this for the next segment.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was so short. Okay.
That's okay. No worries. As a reminder, you are listening to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
We are rolling into segment 2 of Searching for Service with our guest, Leslie Pitt. She's the founder of Project Lolo. And we very rudely had to cut her off in the last segment. And so we would
radio.
We would love for you to continue sharing that segment with us.
Yeah, the journey.
Yeah.
So the journey in starting Project Lolo was really because of my own experience with living with limb loss, which resulted when I was 6. And when I recognized that children in so many parts of the world are denied basic human rights, whether right to life, right to education, right to health care, the list goes on, I knew that I wanted to do something about it. And so I reached out to Save the Children and to UNICEF thinking, certainly they're helping these kids. After I found out that they help all kids in all crises, but there's no organization really helping in the way that we help, I just thought, let's build it and they will come. And so our model is a little bit different. There are a lot of organizations that work with donated prosthetic parts. So prosthetic feet, prosthetic knees, whatever it may be, or donated wheelchairs, crutches. And so what's unique about us is that we partner with the clinics that already have the infrastructure. They already have the clinicians. They already have the workshops that can build the prosthetic limbs or the orthotic devices, or can even, in some cases, build crutches out of wood. And so thinking about sustainability was crucial in starting Project Lolo, because I knew as a child myself who grew up with going through multiple prosthetic limbs, anytime I had a growth spurt, like children go through shoes and clothes, so do their needs for their assistive devices. So I really wanted to have that sort of primary foundational structure with that already existing clinic or workshop or whatever it is. And so really our first partner in Ghana, West Africa, does have an extensive workshop where they do build the prosthetic prosthetic limbs for children. The partnerships that we're ultimately looking at in Uganda are a little bit different. The one in Uganda is an orphanage that is finding that they have a lot of children with limb loss because of the work that they do in the sugarcane fields. And they're ultimately losing limbs because they're injured with machetes as they're cutting the sugarcane and ultimately lose their limbs, right?
Think about that next time you have your frosted flakes, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that's what makes us unique is that we have these partnerships, and we here in the US raise the money and then make the donations to the organizations. They ultimately choose which children get fit with a prosthetic limb or the wheelchair or whatever it is. We wanted to sort of be out of that decision making. For a lot of reasons, but if somebody says, I'm going to donate $500 for a prosthetic limb, we give it with that earmark, and then they ultimately decide which child gets the money, or even they're able to help several children a lot of times with the donations.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Can you share a story that really impacted you? Maybe of a story of Project Lolo's impact, that really struck you and kind of keeps you going?
Yeah. Great question, Joe. When my brother and I first went to Ghana, we had a couple phone calls with the woman who runs the organization before we traveled. And she shared with us a story of a little guy who was 6 months old at the time. And he was born with underdeveloped tibia and fibula in his lower legs. So even though he had legs with flesh and bones, whatever the condition was he had, they would never be functional. Ultimately, for his benefit, he would have to undergo bilateral above-knee amputation so that he could be fit with prosthetic limbs. Unfortunately, in the village where he lived, it was a rural village, a very poor village, where they believe in the practice of spirit children. And this is a common practice, unfortunately, in so many parts of Africa and other parts of the world, where if children are born with some sort of disability, it's perceived that perhaps the child is a witch, or there's some sort of evil force that came in to cause this disability. And a lot of times what happens, and in the case of this child's village, is he was going to be given to a witch doctor who would knowingly brew a tea of poisonous herbs, give it to the baby. If the baby survived, then the disability wasn't because of evil spirits. If the baby died, then ultimately there was some sort of evil force. His mother, of course, fearing for the life of her baby and herself, fled and ultimately ended up at the clinic that we work with in Ghana. And when I first was talking to the woman who runs the orthopedic training center, she told me about Kobe and the story, and really about this concept of called spirit children. And he, after we met him, there's a photo of me holding a baby, and that's him at about 6 months old. About 6 months after we were there, he underwent bilateral amputation above knee of both limbs. He was the first child who Project Lolo was able to help. So his very first limbs, and I get goosebumps, but his first walking limbs were provided with the funds that we were able to donate. And then to see photos of him and video of him just being a little guy, and he's now 6 years old, and seeing him running and playing and the smile on his face, and just the thought that if we could change just one child's life, then we've done it all. If Project Lolo were to end today, just knowing that we helped him is enough, right? And it's just, I think when I really think about how easy it is to help, and easy in terms of the money, it costs about $500 US for one prosthetic limb for a child with our clinical partner in Ghana. It's mind-boggling, and really, right. And not to minimize, but when I first heard the number, I'm like, oh my gosh, like any given weekend, I probably spend that much at Target and running, Trader Joe's, and of course, it's apples and orangutans. They're not even two related items, but when you think about the value, the amount of money that it costs to change a child's life, it was just humbling. And so that is what absolutely compels me to keep giving and going, and realizing if we can just help children literally get out of the village, get out of their homes, whatever it is that constricts them because of not having limbs or not having a wheelchair, and they can get to school, they can get somewhere, their life is changed. And so I think that, I think about him. I have his picture on my laptop. I have a photo in my office, and just seeing him and the other kids it just continually propels me to keep doing more and to really grow Project Lolo into what I believe will be.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness.
Yeah.
I have a hard time not getting emotional thinking about that. And Leslie, you know that Joe and I have a 6, almost 7-month-old. And so the fact that you shared that, and it was a child that was right at the same age as Maddie. I'm sorry to be a little personal, but
it's hard.
It hits home, right?
It hits home.
It does. And then you find out the cost comparison too of like how much it costs here in the United States. And that, like, you know, the currency exchange there, if you will. It's like, you're right. It's mind boggling, to use your words.
Well, it was so wonderful hearing your story, because now I understand the connections between things. Because like I was reading a little bit about the group, and I'm like, I wonder what the connection is here. And you know, sharing your personal story, I'm like, oh, well, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So,
and you know, I don't share it a lot. I mean, you know, and I think about that because it's not about me, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not about me, but yet I know the walk. I've walked the walk. I've talked the talk. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's like a child to live with a disability in Guatemala or Ghana or any other part of the world. But I do know what it's like to be that child who's just wants to be seen for being a child and not being disabled or an amputee or whatever labels are put upon us. And, you know, as I talk more about Project Lolo and moving forward, I feel like it's not selfish because I was given the gift. I mean, to me, I feel like everything that I've experienced because of losing a limb has never been disabling, right? I mean, there's been so many experiences. I would never have started Project Lolo. I would never be here talking to you had I not lost my leg. And so I don't think it's selfish if I'm able to share that story, and that's the reason why I pay it forward.
Well, it's a unique gift to be able to be a conduit between the two, like, between us who have no idea. We don't have any idea what it's like. And then say kids in Ghana that are dealing with it. I mean, you have a very unique perspective where you've kind of tiptoed in both camps, and in the way that you articulate it, it's phenomenal. I mean, your story is incredible. You should tell your story more often because it's really inspiring.
Thank you. You know, and I think, you know, I feel so, like I said, very fortunate. And I don't say that in a sort of, I mean, I'm genuine when I say how fortunate I feel. And I just feel like my value as a human is no greater, right? Because I live here and because I was brought up in these circumstances. And how selfish would it be for me to just say, oh, I have this great life in the US and I've never been denied prosthetics or anything like that because of my disability. That it just doesn't bode well with me. And so I'm just one of these people who believes that, you know, one good act just begets a billion good acts. And so all I can say is I just often think about how lucky I am that I survived my accident, how lucky I was to have the family who raised me and really always said, go, just do whatever it is. My father passed away in February this year, and the last few months of his life, he lived with me. And as bittersweet as it was, we had the opportunity to spend time together. I mean, I was always very close to my dad, always. And I really learned in those last couple months how, as a parent, I mean, also for my mom, you know, like he said, when you had your accident, that was the hardest thing that we went through. And he said it was the hardest thing, right, for a father to see his daughter, you know, ultimately lose her limb. And then, you know, growing up, I mean, it's not something I'd ever wish on anybody. I was teased, I was bullied, but we're all teased and bullied about whatever is different, right? I mean, that's common to all of us. But my dad said, you know, I never would have imagined that you would pay it forward with you know, in ways that you have. I'm not going to cry. So yeah, I just feel very fortunate to be able to do this and to just see the vision and where I believe it'll go.
Well, we're definitely fortunate that we get to have you on the show. So.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you.
We're going to roll into the next segment here, Leslie, and got so much more to cover. So stay tuned, everyone. As a reminder, you are listening to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
And as a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms. And
you can find us by looking us up by searching for Service. I just always want to say it that way. Oh, man, it's like programmed. It's so bad.
And what else, Chad?
You can also find us on YouTube at Searching for Service.
Give us some 5-star reviews.
Would love likes, 5 stars, and shares.
Especially on this part of the podcast. Let's highlight this one.
We have really zero fun on
notch.
This podcast, by the way. Zero fun. All right, I'm going to pass it over to you, Joe.
Yeah, Leslie, I think something really fun to talk about is how people can get involved in Project Lolo, because I think that's something that, I mean, it's so easy to get inspired by your story, especially if anybody's been, uniquely impacted the way that you have, that inspires them, right? And I mean, it inspires me too. So how do people get involved?
I think people can get involved by visiting our website, liking us on social media, just following our stories, following the stories of children that we are ultimately going to start sharing. Certainly donations help. I sort of am not a great fundraiser and, a nonprofit founder, because it's not, although I want to be able to help more kids, I also want people to come at it holistically and genuinely. And so so I feel like if people understand the stories behind the children and the realities of what these children are facing, maybe it has a different dimension of giving. And so it's about educating. And so if people go to our website and read about the statistics and, like us, like I said, like our social media, ultimately some of the stories that we're going to start sharing are really about these kids who are often discarded because of their societies, right? Because of their disability. And what I want to show the world is that they are they are, in my opinion, the strongest, most resilient children I've ever met, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and that's how I want the world to see these kids, and to see them not for their disability, but just for who they are and how strong they are for overcoming what they've done. I think just kind of becoming aware of us and talking about us. We do fundraisers, we do different events, more educational opportunities upcoming.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We'll put all that information on our show page as well to be able to reach out and get in touch with you. What are your hopes and aspirations for the partnership of your organization and, say, Rotary? I mean, it goes together so well. I mean, I'm sure that's part of the reason why you joined.
Hand in hand.
Absolutely. And that was a big factor for me ultimately joining Rotary and finding a club. It is that global scope, and it is that global scope of doing good in the world that Rotary is known for. I ultimately would love, opportunities for grants and even more exposure. Certainly some of the things that I would like to see happen is ultimately going to the United Nations and talking about what is happening to these children. So, some of the human rights violations that, although illegal in their countries, they're still happening, and to be able to share that. And so I think having the support of Rotary, through funding and exposure only gives us a little more credibility, as well as a firmer backbone by which to make these arguments and share these stories.
Well, and there's such an opportunity for you too to kind of run alongside of so many other projects that are happening. Like, there's tons of projects that are happening in healthcare and food and water and sanitation. All of those things are really linked together to kind of basic human needs, dignity, and rights. And it just seems to really kind of fit in with some of that. And we've had guests on prior, like Brian from World Vision and things like that, where they're doing these projects of scale. And I just can't help but see this just fitting so well in with that same thing. Cause it's kind of just that next order of consequence as you keep coming down into basic human needs. So, and it's really eye-opening for us. Like, cause I mean, I don't know a ton about the organization. I did a little bit of research before this, but to your point, like, there's just not enough people talking about it. Not enough people saying, look at this problem. Like, this is a real problem that hurts kids that are in a position that are relatively powerless in that situation, to the point where this mother ran and fled just to save her child. I mean, those are the type of situations that resonate so well with Rotary, resonate so well with people that have hearts. It's like, are you kidding me? And, so, I just see so much opportunity for your organization in partnership with Rotary in the future. It just goes so well to it. And
I kind of just like have a big smile on my face thinking about the like opportunities in the future for Project Lolo, because there really are so many. Like, go back through the Rolodex, I should say, of all of our shows, and you can probably. I mean, Brian Gower is one of the best connection points for you. But my question for you is, my follow-up question to that is, what sort of research have you done in becoming a Rotarian, being a part of the Rotary Club, and how you the grants that are in place? Have you done any research in that respect for how there could be partnerships with Project Lolo?
That's a great question. Definitely. I've started looking into the different global grants, and then just how the grant donation system works, and sort of, for lack of a better term, the rules of engagement. I don't know. You're just kind of learning, what are the different grant opportunities, and then what are the focus points for each of those grants? Is it maternal child health? Is it child health? Is it human rights? Just really trying to find what are those niche grant opportunities that align with what we're doing. And to the point, Joe, about human rights, I mean, it's so fundamental, right? And so much of the work that Rotary has done and continues to do, and with Rotarians across the globe. And there's a synergy. I mean, even though we're serving kids, with this capacity, there's no reason that we can't partner with another organization. I mean, the need is so great, right? Like somebody once told me early on that you can never do more good in the world. Like, there's always the opportunity to do more good. And by partnering with other organizations or whatever it may be, it just magnifies the work that you do individually and collectively.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, in talking through all of this, the piece that I completely underestimated in all of this was like the human rights violation component of it, right? Like where they're just treated as a second-class citizen or not at all.
Right.
And, usually you just think, boy, you've got a handicap that, ostracizes you sometimes in your culture or your community, and you just kind of deal with that. But literally not being treated as a human, I just never thought of that. And that's the part that kind of sticks with me a little bit, is going, and it's fixable. It's fixable.
It is absolutely fixable. And it absolutely is. And I think that, to one of your earlier questions, like what keeps me going, not only the children that we've helped, but how easy it is and how fixable it is. Also to what you were just saying, a lot of children, again, in these countries, when they're born with a disability, they're not even given a birth number. So a lot of different countries, when children are born, are assigned a birth number. They're not even deemed to be a human and are not assigned a birth number. So even the scope of children with disabilities, I don't know that we really know the real numbers, right? Because the field research that's been done is probably just people who are on the ground. But when you really think about it, if children aren't given a birth number or not even acknowledged as a human being, and then ultimately put into the registries of the ministries of health or departments of health or whatever the organizing bodies that retain this information, we don't really know what's happening. And to that very point, they're not even deemed worthy of being acknowledged as a human, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, I'm not so naive to think that we can change centuries or thousands of years of culture, right? I mean, I'm not thinking that we can change the whole practice, because that's not how I want to spend my energy. That's not how Project Lolo wants to spend our energy. But if we can just, again, educate and let people know, because I did not know about what was happening to kids until I started Project Lolo, until I started doing the research, and as I've been in this world. And again, it's just, we just need to know. And hopefully the more that we know, the more we talk about it, the less it'll happen, and the more opportunities for children to just be children and live.
Well, and like you said earlier, I mean, helping one is worth it and let alone many. And
Yeah.
so, when you start to try to quantify it, it's difficult to do because it can become so demoralizing quickly when it's the same thing in any sort of philanthropy. I mean, we're never going to outsize the need in some of this stuff. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in. And our job is just to do the best that we can. And, not to switch gears super fast, but I'm going to switch gears really quick. And I keep going. And then we got about a minute left on this segment is how did you come up with the name? Lolo.
Great question. So Lolo stands for Love Ourselves, Love Others.
Oh, okay.
LOLO. Backwards, it stands for One Life, One Limb. And that's really my homage to my own experience of living so when I thought of a name and I kind of knew the gravity and really what's going on, I wanted to have a name that was uplifting and bright and had a meaning behind it. And Lolo really stands for, whatever we accept about ourselves and love and accept about ourselves. And once we do that, I feel like we can be more loving and accepting of others.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Perfect.
Nice job, Leslie.
Thank you.
I was waiting for my first dog I had when I was growing up was named Lolo.
So much more. That's really incredible. Well, I think just to kind of spin off into our next segment coming up here, Leslie will focus on the future of Project Lolo and maybe a little bit more in that connection point with Rotary as well. So as a reminder, you are listening to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson. We'll be back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
As a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms and
look us up by inputting Searching for Service.
Gosh.
I'm fired from this.
It's literally.
But you say you can find us, and so then I would have to say, look, you can find us again. So that's what trips me up. So
Okay.
I'm fired. I'm just gonna fire myself.
I'm gonna do it.
I have to take it over,
Oh
Kelly.
my gosh, I'm going to.
Just type in Searching for Service wherever you're getting your podcasts.
Or on YouTube.
There it is.
100%
Done.
better.
Look at that.
There we go.
Wow.
Okay, so if
Flying squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
if you're tuning in for the first time, we have, which is sad because we're now in our last segment here. Disappointing if you're listening for the first time.
Hey, you never know what people are doing. It's okay.
Whatever. So we have Leslie Pitt, who is the founder of Project Lolo on. And in this last segment for our Searching for Service show, we're going to talk about the future of Project Lolo. And how you see it right now, Leslie. And that obviously could change, but...
I have a question too, is how has it evolved already? Because it's been 5 years or 6 years you've been doing this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been around for 5 years. Certainly took a break during the pandemic, like the whole world stood still, right? Mm-hmm. But it also, that pause gave us opportunity to really reflect on where we want to go and strategize. And now that everybody, starting to kind of reemerge, there's like a new energy too. And I feel very more focused really on how I want to see it go and where we're going to go with it.
Do you have a vision board or something like that you'd be willing to share? Like it's out there, it's like 10 years from now and you're like, this is what this organization's going to be doing and what it's all about.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a vision board that has time frames, right? I have a vision board that has pictures, and I have pictures of children. I have pictures of the United Nations in Geneva. I have pictures of just imagery, right? Like different countries, like sub-Saharan Africa, and just, images that really sort of fit who we are and really the children. And the pictures of children are actually a lot of the kids that we've met and just these smiling faces. So I'm probably not very good with, having a really strategic plan. However, we have some new board membership where we have people who have a much stronger financial background and business development background than I do. And so we're really positioning ourselves to the future as a business, right? I mean, I started this nonprofit thinking with a business mentality that we do good work, but I want to expand it. I want to scale it up. And because of, the reality of the work that we can do. So certainly having somebody come on board who has that very, very wealthy background just as a CFO in a global organization who also has a passion for helping kids with limb loss is just the perfect timing. I mean, I'm a strong proponent in trusting the timing of our lives. Things, I'm probably one of the most impatient people that you'll ever meet. And I certainly have learned that, I have a time frame in my head when things should happen, and it should be very, very quick, but it doesn't. And so when things 5 years later present themselves, then I have that aha moment, like, okay, now is when we're ready to grow. And so certainly as I look to the future, I look to, really driving this forward as that sort of for-profit business mentality, but with this philanthropic, do good perspective.
Sure.
You're not going to be like Jim Carrey and carry around a $10 million check in your pocket for 15 years until he...
No, I probably should though, right?
Well, but yeah, I mean, I think of for you, like, it'd be really cool, like, to be at the United Nations presenting, accepting a $50 million global grant from something.
Yeah.
Ooh, it was put out into the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got goosebumps with that one. But there's a project that I'm working on. I'm just going to kind of keep it under wraps, but it's very much, that I think will take it to the next level. It's about sharing some of the stories in a way that probably hasn't been done. So as that vision is so clear. I mean, that vision immediately came into my head, and it's amazing how now that I've started working on it, like anything, it just falls into place.
When it's up and running, we'll have you back on and you can share.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
All the listeners are going to be like, we're dying to know what this is all about.
Yeah. I'm very excited about it.
Excellent. How about you? What do you see for your future in terms of your role with the organization, or do you have aspirations to do more?
Absolutely. I mean, my vision for myself is to be able to do this full time. I mean, I have a day job that pays the bills, and that's the reality. Somebody once told me you can't live on life and love. True. And so, I mean, yeah. But it's also okay to do this kind of work and to be compensated for it. Right. And so, you look at these other organizations, like, I mean, Save the Children, UNICEF. I mean, people do get paid to do this type of work. And so my goal is to definitely shift at some point to be able to take that leap of faith and just do it, and just trust. Because I just feel like every time that I put effort into it and time, the universe opens up, thousandfold, right?
Yeah.
And I've often thought that, for every hour that I put into it, I just get hours back of return. And so how wonderful would it be if I could do this, full time? That I definitely see, that's definitely part of the vision. I certainly appreciate professional careers that I've had. I've had a very rich career with, in healthcare and law, but there's nothing that's felt so true, so easy, again, I'm such a proponent of different quotes, but there's a quote like, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah. And it's starting this absolutely true. I wrote a children's book about 5 years ago, same thing. And it's like the two together, that's it, and so, everything takes time, like I said, and I trust that timing, and it'll happen when the timing is right.
Mm-hmm. I do think that, you mentioned that you don't love telling your story sometimes, or that you don't. I would challenge you
from the
to do exactly the opposite, because I think your story is really amazing, and it's shaped you and shaped why you do what you do. And it helps people. Like, I mean, I couldn't fully understand what the organization was about and like your connection until you shared that story. And the moment you shared the story, I'm like, oh, well, duh.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Like, of course that's the connection. Of course that's, there's some real strong ties to real things inside of you versus like, I was in a country, I saw this and I didn't like it. It was more like, I know what they're feeling. I know what they're experiencing. I understand.
There's the sympathy, but there's the true empathy. Like
Absolutely.
like you said, I'm walking the walk. Like I've been there, I've done it, and experienced all of the stuff that you're experiencing, the emotions and what have you. So, yeah.
How often do you get to go over and see some of the impact that you guys are having?
So we've been there. So we've been twice. We had 2 trips planned during the pandemic, or right at the start of the pandemic, canceled. We had another trip planned about a year ago, canceled because of some family health issues. So I hate to even say when our next trip will be, because I'm just going to book it and just take off and be like, hi, I'm in Kenya.
We're here.
Hi, hello. So certainly, and that's something too, now that the world is opening up. Within a year from now, so my words, what is it, October 6th, 2023, a year from now, I will have been to Africa and back at least once, if not twice.
Well, an interesting challenge that I have for you, too, is to use your leverage with Rotary and maybe bring some people with you.
Absolutely.
And really open
Joseph.
people's eyes. And I think that's a really wonderful opportunity to share that.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly will sign up.
I was literally just saying,
sorry,
Leslie, I'll join you.
There you go. Absolutely. Because we've talked about that. Like so many people have expressed interest, like what can we do to help? And it's, again, it's not like we go and build things, right? It's not like we go and fit children with prosthetics because we don't have the skill set, right? Like, so it's what is it that we can do to help and not go there and sort of just be spectators, right? So there's that finding what are those opportunities, because I do believe that there are some. And, certainly as one of the things that I want to start exploring more is going into some of the orphanages. And because I think that's something that I've only seen some exposure on media through AP News and such. But there are a lot of orphanages that are just something that I want to see what the reality is. And again, it's not to shame the people who run the orphanages and sort of the infrastructure that they have, but to also sort of show the world, like, this is what's happening. This is what we can
create awareness.
So maybe create awareness. Absolutely. Absolutely. Change the conditions for these kids.
Well,
so that they're.
You have definitely created a lot of awareness around Project Lolo for us, and it's been really special having you on the show. So thank you so much.
We're so honored to have you.
The website.
We'll make sure to get the website in there, and then social media platforms as well, Leslie. So thank you so much for being a guest on our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
And I'm Chad Larson.
It's time to stop searching
and start searching.
We'll see you next time.